Welcome to the World of Podcast 2019 WoW Classic Panel, presented by Medieval Times. The following is a presentation of D20 Creative Alliance and Con Before the Storm, powered by Wowhead. For more information, go to conbeforestorm.com.
So, welcome all to the WoW Classic panel, and I will pass it off to Josh, our moderator for this evening, and enjoy.
Thank you. Hello, Classic fans. What's going on? How are we? It's so good to see you all. This is this tight-knit community that we talk about. We're very happy to be here, and we're gonna cram it into a 45-minute slot here with a lot of classic chat, so we're really excited. I'm going to introduce everyone. If you're not aware of who all these wonderful gentlemen up on stage with me are, let's go through it real quick, and then we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of what's up with Classic right now. So let's go from my left to right. Down the end of YouTube fame, you all know him, you all love him, Platinum WoW.
Hi.
And we have the brothers here, again of YouTube fame, Melderon, Defcamp. Say hello. Back from years gone by and back with a vengeance of WoW Radio, Athalus. And down the end, if any of you do happen to listen to Countdown to Classic, you know he is my number one contributor, my number one caller, Ayle.
Oh yeah.
So guys, where I figured we would pick up from is people think WoW Classic is out. What possibly could there be to talk about? A lot. And we're going to go through it tonight as quickly and effectively as we can. And I'm going to start off with you, Ayle, actually, and we'll piggyback off each other here. But it's talking about the state of WoW Classic as we are right now. And, as we say, the game is out. It had a huge reception. But things have settled down to a point that we kind of expected roundabout now. Layers have been removed. A little, a bit of the population has dropped away as we forecast. How do you see the state of WoW Classic right now?
Fluid.
Yeah,
state.
Yeah.
I think right now with how they've changed, introducing the different, originally they had 6 segments that they were going to release the content in, releasing Dire Maul early. How they've taken out layering, I think some servers still have layering in. It's shown a real shift in how they're approaching the overall Classic release. They've kind of gone away from what they've decided they were going to do, what they've told the community they're going to do. Releasing Dire Maul early before Phase 2, I think is their first kind of sign that, this might be a little bit different than what they originally communicated to us. Yeah.
I'll move down the line. Athalus, are you happy with where we are at the moment?
I am. The big thing for me was just seeing how much the population skyrocketed, right? And you look at why did Blizzard ultimately do this? I think they did it because there was a need. I also think they did it because they knew it would ultimately bleed over a little bit into retail, right? So I feel like I am really happy with where we are. I actually enjoyed the fact that they released Dire Maul a little bit early. You had people kind of itching for content that had already finished everything. And then there are folks that aren't going to go into raids, and they needed something to do when they got to max level, so it made a lot of sense to do that. But yeah, I'm very pleased.
Okay. Defcamp, Melderon, same question. With where we're at, we talked about this for so long, coming into release. We predicted a few things. We've probably been relatively on point with what we predicted.
Yeah.
Are things happening the way you thought they would, and have there been any curveballs that you didn't see coming?
Honestly, I thought things were going to be a little rougher than they were. I thought the layering was going to be worse. I wasn't too big a fan of the layering, but the way it was implemented and the way it's been trickled down now is actually, on our server it's not that bad. I don't know how any of the other servers are. My biggest concern is server sizes and how they're going to go into Phase 2. We have some issues with some servers being heavily skewed Horde, not enough Alliance. So those are like my thoughts. What are we going to do come Phase 2 when our server Skyrim has literally 80% Horde almost? So yeah, as far as content though, I'm really happy how things are going right now. I think DM coming out a little early was nice. I'm ready for Phase 2, ready for some PvP, and but yeah, that's my biggest concern right now is the issue with the little bit of skewed of the factions. Yeah. So.
Melderon?
I think in general, I think things are going well. However, there are things that do concern me. Skyrim is a very good example because of as you said, the very large faction skew we have. How are we going to deal with that? What is Phase 2 going to be like in a server where you can't find alliance? And our population size is extremely high as well, and we're worried about world bosses. There's only supposed to be one world boss, right? And if a server has a population of effectively 10,000 people at one time, that's much higher than it was during vanilla times, and that's also what it was like on private servers, and I think we should deviate from that as much as we possibly can. And then finally, my other concern is, Dire Maul released early, and that's fine, a lot of people enjoyed that. However, does that mean that Blizzard is going to also throw that away in future releases? Are they going to speed up some releases? This may be our only chance to play Classic WoW. We don't know if they're going to do TBC. We don't know if they're going to be doing Classic Plus. I think it's very important that we try to voice our concerns about how we put out content and make sure it sticks to the original plan and not rush things. However, I know that sounds a lot of doom and gloom, but I think that they're doing a very, very good job overall.
Yeah.
Platinum.
Yes.
2 months into the game. Are you a happy customer?
I'm so happy. One of the servers that I play on, Grobulus, they already have layering removed. You just go to Orgrimmar and it's so super, super populated. One of the things I was super happy about was the server health when the game launched. I was so worried that servers were going to be crashing all the time. And the only thing we had to deal with was queues, which sucks, but you know that once you finally get through that queue, you can play the game, and it was stable, and it was good. And I was super happy about that, yeah.
Okay, very good. Guys, I'm going to open this one up to the floor because you've already raised some points that I think warrant further discussion. And it's, we sit here and we analyze what we've got. We are consumers of the game. We pay a monthly subscription. And we want to know the health of the game that we are currently playing. And Melderon, Ayle, Defcamp, you guys have hit on this. Things moving forward that might become issues that the community would highlight. And you've talked about faction imbalance. You talked about overall populations. And so when I say first in, best dressed, as you guys know I like to do, Ayle, I know you raised a great example with me recently in terms of free server transfers and the shenanigans that can happen there, which throw other servers askew if big guilds do plan together to move somewhere else. What could Blizzard do, or what do you anticipate is going to happen in the future in terms of servers being, quote unquote, messed with a little bit in this regard in terms of faction ratios?
Well, we all know that what brings a lot of us to Classic is just how good the community is, right? We want to play on healthy servers, active servers with a lot of people. You want to be able to run those dungeons and things like that because, there isn't the modern conveniences. That's why we're playing Classic. So I hope that at some point in the future that they work a little bit to make sure to preserve those communities. Right now, it's been difficult on our server, as I said, because the transfers have just been wide open and it's caused one faction almost to leave entirely. So I hope that there is consideration they give to the communities and how they, essentially manage these communities. So whether it's only, one specific faction being able to transfer or having paid transfers, things like that. I think that's the most important thing for a lot of people is that this game means something when you're playing with other people, right? Against them, with them. And having that being, there's a couple cracks right now, and I really hope they address that in some way. Yeah.
I think one of the interesting things about that is, obviously when WoW came out, you couldn't transfer servers to begin with, right? And so we talk about not having any changes, but already right away, we're able to transfer from one server to another. And so things kind of just worked themselves out 15 years ago, right? there weren't as many imbalances, I think, in those days in terms of populations on a given server. Also, there were fewer people overall. You raised a great point earlier about the fact once world bosses come out, are we going to have too many people? Well, we already know the populations are higher than they used to be. I was our Maelstrom RP PvP server back in vanilla, and the big thing, we maybe had 4 or 5 guilds. We were a fairly large server, 4 or 5 guilds competing for a Kazakh kill. Now with, I don't know, what is it, double, maybe triple the population even, you're going to have a lot more competition for that, and if the respawn timers are the same and there's only one layer, then that's probably the biggest issue that I see coming out of it.
One thing I would say is looking at how things were done, in the past now with layering and everything, and I do have a little bit of faith in the Classic WoW development team. I think they've done a great job with things so far, and I think that they can take these concerns that we have and work them, into a good solution. I think one of the main things that we've seen is they've really taken into consideration what the community thinks, and they've looked at, multiple different sources of people saying this, we want that. And I think as long as they keep doing that, having an open door with the community, blue posts, things like that, I think we have a pretty good future to look forward to. I don't think things are going to be so bad, especially with how things have been laid out so far. I think they've done a really good job with what they had. We saw a lot of servers get pushed out during launch. We tried to say, hey guys, we think there's going to be a lot of people playing this game. Maybe you guys should have more than 8 servers, and they started pushing them out, but it was a little late, but they did it. But yeah, I think things are looking bright though. I think things will be okay.
Yeah, I just want to commend Omar Gonzalez and his team because they're doing a bang-up job. They really, really are, and I feel like that they have the community's best interests at heart, and I think that they also, don't have the immunity that we think they probably do have. They probably, have to work within the channels of Blizzard Activision. It's a large corporation, and there's things that, need to be addressed, and server size is probably one of those things where their hands were tied for a lot of things. But I think for the most part, the transparency, especially leading up to release about it was weekly things we were getting for a while there, weekly updates about what they're doing and how they're trying to implement changes and trying to make the game as close to the original game as possible. So I think, trust the process is definitely part of it. I just think that also we should also just be a little bit vigilant. We shouldn't stop working now. It was a fight to get this game to come out, and I just think we should not just sit there and just take the waves as they come. Just be vigilant about what's happening at the same time as well.
I think keeping that open dialogue with the community is such an important thing. You've seen how they've changed how the phases have worked because of that community feedback, and I think that's something they need to continue to do in the future. I think one of their biggest problems they're going to have in the near future is dealing with those mega servers like Fairlina, for example, where there is no possible way you can remove layering and have that be a smooth process because there already is crazy queues for that. So talking with the community about ways that they can tackle that overpopulation of a server, whether that be free character transfers or maybe splitting the whole server in 2 so you have Fairlina 1 and Fairlina 2. I don't know, but keep that dialogue open and talk to us about what their plans are to make Phase 2 have no layering, for sure.
Yeah. Guys, you mentioned, a few of you said that obviously Diamore was just released to us, and a lot of you are having a great time with that. But, I mean, we presume not much further down the track is something very exciting, which is Phase 2, which brings the honor system. PvP will come back, baby.
Hell yeah.
Now, if a few of you are on a server where you're like, no one really PvPs much anymore, well, hopefully that will turn around very soon. I want to know right now on this panel, who's the most excited for Phase 2?
Me.
Probably
Talk
definitely.
to us about it. Why?
So much of my original love of WoW is PvP. I love PvE content, I do, but whether it's World PvP, some of my best memories that I ever had playing this game is World PvP. Had an epic moment, when I was playing Alliance back in the day, storming the front gates of Orgrimmar, just awesome stuff. So to be able to experience that World PvP again, where people are going to be funneled into only being able to do PvP, not in Battlegrounds, but out in the world. People going into Molten Core and just getting destroyed. People going to Dire Maul getting destroyed. I can't wait. I play a priest, which is, it's obviously not going to be bashing people's heads in, but I'll be supporting, some people and hopefully getting my rank up. And I don't know, it's going to be a nice change of pace. Like right now, there's some things to do. I find myself farming in DM most of the time and just waiting for raid, but having that phase 2 and just going for that honor and it's going to be, taking up most of my time. So I'm really looking forward to that. Absolutely.
So for me, for phase 2, I think it's going to be really fun because it's just going to be world PvP like hellscape in these like level 60 areas. And I think it's going to be fun for me personally for a solid 4 days. And then every time I fly to Thorium Point and I get ganked every single time, it's not going to be that much fun anymore. But what it does do is it makes it so if I want to get the Blackrock Mountain, I have to be escorted by my guild to do that. And that is just we're going into such a unique point in Classic where world PvP is so incentivized.
Absolutely.
That you're going to make some awesome memories if you.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people play on PvE servers, and that's great. But I feel that PvP, even though I'm not a huge PvP person, Defcamp's much more than I am. But I think PvP is a very big part of the game. And I believe that we haven't experienced all of World of Warcraft Classic until PvP is released, until the honor system is released and incentivizes PvP. PvP can happen now, of course, organically, but I think it's incentivized much more after honor is.
On a PvP server right now, it really does feel like World of Warcraft Classic Light.
Yeah, it does. It does.
Yeah. That's one thing I want to say is I don't want people who never played Classic before to come into Classic and think that, this is all there is to it. There's so much more coming in these later phases that if you haven't experienced Classic yet, just hold out. It's going to get crazy. It is. It's going to get really intense.
It's funny you mentioned Thorium Point. I feel like everyone has a Blackrock Mountain story.
Yeah.
At some point. So BlizzCon 2005, I met some folks and never thought I'd see them again. And maybe a year later, I'm getting in a one-on-one just outside of Blackrock Mountain, and someone comes up and starts healing me. Thank you for the World PvP Priest. And come to find out, this is somebody I had met a year ago at BlizzCon. I'm just how did this happen?
That's awesome.
That's great.
Yeah.
Ayle, one thing I want to ask you, buddy, is we've also talked about the population, and I think it would be remiss not to acknowledge that yes, with layers being removed, the population has decreased. We all somewhat predicted it. Yes, we're going to burst out of the gates. WoW Classic is going to be huge. And then a month or two into it, the subscriber numbers will start to somewhat drop down to, the quote-unquote tourists have gone away and servers start to settle. They're settling, though, at a level where, as the guys say, there still might be 10,000 people on a server. We move into phase 2, world PvP, on a system, no layers. What kind of mayhem do you think is coming?
It's going to be chaos, really. And I think on the PvP servers as well, for people who haven't experienced that, it might be pretty eye-opening. There will be groups of really ruthless players going around killing anybody, especially those lower-level, easy-picking players, you.
Yeah, me.
Who haven't leveled up yet.
Yes.
Josh. And it's really, what I really like about it is how they kind of mentioned earlier how it creates kind of divergent gameplay, because now, if you're getting ganked and you're having trouble leveling, well, maybe you reach out to some of your friends and say, hey, can you come back me up here? And then, then you have the numbers, then you have the advantage, right? So where before, that doesn't really exist as much, I feel like, in Classic, because you have more reward, right? You have to give something to risk, right? And so by putting this in, and especially on the PvP servers, losing that time just by having people ganking and stuff, I think it really will help pull people together. And so a lot of people have been kind of negative about it, saying, it might not be good, people might quit and things like that, but I think it's going to bring a lot more people together than push them apart.
That's a good point. I think, one thing is if you find yourself playing a lot by yourself now, definitely make some friends, because you're going to have a horrible
Strength
time.
in numbers.
Yeah, exactly. So, but it, and I really like what you said, Ayle, because it really does give you more of a reason to, talk to people, to socialize, to make friends, to go out there and maybe help somebody you normally wouldn't have helped, and, they might back you up in the future. So, yeah.
With this phase 2 coming, guys, the one thing, obviously, a lot of Classic fans here in front of us, We've talked about the reasons to be excited for Phase 2. If I were to put you guys in the decision-making shoes and said, all right, you're on the Classic team now, when would you drop Phase 2?
I would, if it's open to anyone, I would, what I would look at is the data from vanilla, and I would say, all right, at what point, how far along was the population at a given point when we released Blackwing Lair or something along those lines? I think what we forget a lot of times is that in vanilla WoW, raiding wasn't part of everyone's life, and I think only the top 5 or 10% were really in raids. And so I think right now there's this rush to like push content out because, the streamers, the hardcore raiders, they're already through the content, let's release it. But we got to remember that vanilla WoW wasn't created for raiders, it was created for the average person that wanted to enjoy the journey. So I think we need to wait for the data to show that a significant portion of the playing player base has made it up to 60. They don't have to go to Molten Core, but let's get them to that point where they're actually able to participate in these things and not lose sight. The streamers on Classic WoW, they're not going to stop playing. So
I've got a follow-up question for you, mate,
Okay.
because you just said something that piqued my interest. Now, we know that Classic is not vanilla, vanilla is not Classic.
Right.
You've said that back in the day, it was catered towards the average player, let's say, right?
Yeah.
Do you honestly feel that Classic, that's still the same ethos?
No, it's a great question. I think the people that are discovering WoW for the first time are probably in that wheelhouse, but it certainly was created for a private server player that certainly isn't in that demographic. So I think you're right. It's probably changed at this point. But I'm a filthy casual, so I just want them to do it for me.
Join the club, mate. That's all
right.
right.
That's right.
Ayle, I know you want to get in on this.
Why don't we ask the audience? How many people are playing Classic?
Yeah.
How many people have leveled up to 60?
Okay.
Only
So
about 20%.
20%? Yeah. So I think that still rings true today that, it isn't just for people pushing that end-game content. It's really an RPG that you play at your own pace, right? And so I know a lot of us, I think up here especially, are skewed. Who's 60 here, right? Most of us, not Josh.
Not me.
So for us, we have a little bit of a different perspective, but there's a lot more to the game than just the end game, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think if you guys remember when DM came out, there was a lot of people who said, not yet, we're not ready.
It's too soon.
It's too soon, yeah. A lot of people were saying that, and honestly, I kind of agreed with them a little bit. I was one of the fortunate ones who was able to take a couple weeks off work and power level, and still didn't get to 60 at the time I wanted to, but, for a lot of people now, this game we played 15 years ago, a lot of us are in different points in our life now. You know what I mean? Some people work full time, some people have families, they can't play as much as they used to. And I think we got to keep that in consideration too. There's a lot of people who play this game for the leveling experience, for playing with their friends, for doing dungeons, and then maybe doing some any-game dungeons, doing a raid here and there, but I don't think we should really focus on the 1% and maybe try to balance it out a little bit.
Yeah, I think that PvP release, it's a really hard thing. In a way, I think this is a perfect time to do it because PvP is sustainable content, and it's multiply. It's almost like self-replicating content, right? It provides organic ways for people to engage in infinite combinations. So on one end, I think that it probably should have been released early, even before Dire Maul. The problem is, of course, the honor gear. So that's an issue with the meta. But I think that PvP itself doesn't really, the release of the honor system doesn't really affect the game in a negative way. I think it's going to be a positive thing because it produces so much organic content. And again, if you're on a PvE server, that doesn't, it's not really happen very often until Battlegrounds come out. But on a PvP server, I think that the honor system is really a sandboxy environment.
Yeah.
So it's really good for the game, in my opinion.
For me personally, I feel like they should release Phase 2 January or February, and the reason I have for that is if you want to get rank 14, you have to play 18 hours a day, 12 hours a day, and if you release it around Christmas time, some lives might be ruined. So I feel like you should set it back a little bit, and again, I feel like we are the very vocal minority. I feel like there's a huge casual player base that still hasn't hit 60 yet. And I feel like they're still just enjoying the game. And I feel like you guys said, rushing it is not a good idea.
Guys, I've got 2 more relatively quick questions that I want to hear from everyone on, and then we'll throw it open to the floor for some Q&A. But obviously, with this in the near future, this phase 2 in the PvP, we all, play a certain class as our main, doing our thing. I want to know what class you're scared of the most coming into phase 2.
SL Lock, dude. SL Lock all day. I mean, as a Shadow Priest, like when I play Shadow, I play PI spec and Shadow, so mostly healing. But SL Locks are just scary. They're just, especially when they're geared. Like we had a SL Lock, we had like a little duel tournament, and give them like some tier 1, some Shadow resistance. They just can't quit.
But I've been taught, Defcamp, that SL Locks are like the boogeyman. They don't exist. They're so rare. You never see them.
You will see them in phase 2. Be sure of that. You will. Yeah. And trust me, there's a lot of them out there. Like, the tier 1 set is not that great for a Warlock, but for PvP, it's amazing. So if people are spending their DKP right, you should be getting that tier 1. Yeah.
Who else?
I think he took my answer, but I'll just say Shadow Priest as well. Shadow Priest is another class you don't want to come across.
In the 1v1.
In 1v1, right, exactly.
We're coming for you, Melderon.
Oh, I know. I know. I use my, make sure my lightning bolts are coming out quick.
Yeah.
I can totally see hunters just stalking around the level 60 zones, just picking people off as far as they possibly can, just kiting them. Like, they're going to be the vultures of phase 2, I feel.
Female night elf hunters.
Oh, the bane of my existence.
Yep. I'm with you, Platinum. Hunters, everyone talks to me. Oh, they're easy. Just run away from them and then go back. And it's like, no, hunters own
If they engage you from max distance, and you're like, let's say,
when you have no mana as well,
like you're screwed. It's the fight's already over.
When you have no mana.
Yeah. And then they pop out a shadow meld. Yeah.
As a mage, it's probably BM Hunter. Nothing more annoying to me than just not being able to shake that pet. It's between that and a rogue. If a rogue gets the jump on me, it can be a little bit tough, but no, definitely BM Hunter all the way.
It's Ayle, actually, you go first, and then I'll jump in with what I got.
Well, it depends how many healers I have as a warrior.
As a warrior, yeah.
Typical warrior
Fair
response.
enough. Well, we were talking about this earlier, guys, and another really quick one. You talk about rogues, and I mean, I used to be afraid of rogues. Yeah. Now I am not. I feel like things have changed in Classic. Has anyone else felt that?
Absolutely, dude. It's like sometimes they can't even get through your shield. You know what I mean? You pop a shield on, they'll sap, wait for it to go through, and then you can pop another shield on. If they open up with your shield on, and that's the thing is right now no one has PvP trinkets, right? So if you fear someone, they're getting feared unless they're undead. Like, you can kill them sometimes before they come back to you from that fear. So I think they will become a little bit more scary once they have more access to get out of fears and things like that. So
would they arguably be the class that we talk about how much we've learnt about, vanilla or classic over the years, and everyone's theory crafted everything to death, everyone's learned their tactics. Would rogues have gotten the least benefit out of the community at large, educating themselves on the game?
That's a good question.
In terms of, obviously, you do stun locks. Now everyone kind of goes, I'm getting stun locked. I will do this. I don't know.
There's some really good rogues out there that I know for a fact. Of course your stun lock is your good. A dagger rogue can be really scary with a lot of burst potential. I think it's so much of vanilla PvP is utilizing things outside of the norm, right? Engineering, different items, trinkets. And anyone who says that vanilla or classic PvP is boring, sorely mistaken. There's so many aspects you can bring to the table with, and rogues can actually do pretty damn good when they use some of the right equipment. So that's one thing. If you play outside the box, you play a little bit different. You learn from some people there's some really great people you can look, find on YouTube. I'm blanking out on a name right now, but I think that's the key to especially for rogues. Yeah.
Guys, if we wind up on this one, I'd like to hear from everyone real quick, and then we'll throw it open to some questions. But 2 months in, this is around about the time that publications would give a review of a game. How would you summarize in a nutshell your review of World of Warcraft Classic?
10 out of 10.
For me personally, I describe it as endless because like I started out playing my priest, and I've been playing my priest. I've been having a great time, but I've gotten to the point now where currently in this phase I can't really progress my character that much. And then I decided to make a shaman, and it's like a whole totally different game. Yep. I know Melderon's he plays a shaman,
too, brother,
but
so
like
yeah.
it's just a totally different game. I'm learning totally different new things about the shaman class, and like now I'm like, man, do I want to drop my priest and just play my shaman now? Because I'm just having so much of a good time, and yeah, endless. That's how I'd review the game so far.
That's awesome.
It's all about having a good time.
Yeah.
I think we had a little bit of a rough beginning, but I think that let's just take things into perspective. Most of us in this room were waiting for over a decade for this to come out, and when it did, it was when the announcement happened in 2017, and now that the game actually came out, like it's a dream come true. So, we can nitpick and we can say things weren't exactly the way they should be, or why 1.12? Why didn't we go from 1.1? Why didn't we do this? Why didn't we do that? We didn't. Classic is not vanilla, right? It exists. It's a different thing. And as long as we understand that, I think we could be fair and basic. We can't compare it to vanilla. So in that aspect, I'm going to give it 9.5. I mean, it's my favorite game. I don't play any other game. It's the only game I play. So it's part of my life, and I think it's great, and I think that it's going to revolutionize gaming in some way. Again, yeah.
Yeah, to touch on that point, I think it's a resounding success. And the reason I believe that is this is something that Blizzard themselves told us wasn't going to happen. And the community spoke up so loud that they made it for us, right? And I think that alone is just a huge success. I think the popularity of it is much higher than even Blizzard anticipated. And for me, that's just a win, definitely.
I think when I think about the success, it's really, you say you can't compare it to vanilla. It's so hard not to compare it to vanilla, though. I mean, they have a lot in common, right? So when you think about, I always think back to the vanilla launch and how much downtime we had and how many free days they were giving us back in the day, right? It was down a lot. And so when you think about comparing it, this launch has been really smooth in comparison to 15 years ago. I mean, yeah, layers and queues and all that, but I would much rather have that than servers just be down forever. But me, I'm thrilled with it. I log in, I do a little bit of leveling, I log out. I'm probably like you. We'll get to 60 one day, right?
One day we'll get there, mate.
I'm enjoying the journey again,
That's what it's all about.
So I would rate it very highly.
Fantastic. Look, everyone, there is a wealth of classic knowledge sitting at this table. Not me, these guys. So who's got some questions? What do you want to know from us?
Okay, if you guys have any questions, make sure that you raise your hands nice and high. We'll start off in the front corner.
All right, one of my guys.
Here you go.
This question might be unpopular, so I apologise in advance. Obviously, Classic has been an absolute juggernaut. People have really, really enjoyed it. But at the same time, there are certain things about it that we may not like, certain things that we would like to help, quality of life sort of things brought into the game. Just want to know for you guys, if you could bring one thing from retail of a quality of life change into Classic, what would that one thing be and why?
I'm not allowed to say the LFG mod, right?
We'll throw you off
That's
the
not my
stage.
answer. It was just a joke.
Ayle, this is a tough one, isn't it?
It's a tough one, yeah.
I want to say one thing is I absolutely, after playing Classic, on private servers, whatever, on such a long time, and then not playing, playing retail, coming back to it, you do miss stuff, right? Obviously being able to dual spec would be amazing. Yeah. That is one thing that I find myself probably wanting more than anything is dual spec. However, I don't know if I would. To answer your question, that would probably be dual spec for me. Yeah, honestly, yeah.
I think you were saying is the ramifications.
Yeah, the ramifications.
We don't know the ramifications, right? But
yeah.
I don't know, man. That's a really hard question. Jeez. I'm going to pass for now because I have to think about it. Yeah.
I feel like
Hashtag no changes.
the answer's obvious, right? It's LFR. We need LFR.
God.
No, but serious answer. Serious answer is it takes so long to mount on a mount. It takes 2 seconds. Why can't it be retail where it takes like 1.5 seconds, you know? Why is it when I get in the water, my mount dismounts, you know?
Yeah. I'll give you my answer. And this is a bit of a non-event answer, and I'm not trying to be, outlandish by saying this, but it is legitimately nothing. And I'll give you an example of why I say nothing. They gave us something so small in terms of the quality of life improvements, and they said, hey, the mail. Guys, we're finally going to let you open all your mail in one.
That was huge.
I still open every single piece of mail individually. Call me crazy, but that's just how I do it. And so everything that we got in vanilla is how I likes it. I don't know, I'm strange that way.
That's funny. I think dual spec is definitely the easy answer. It's hard pressed to find much else, but I would like to not fail when I try to pick an herb. That'd be nice.
Yeah.
I mean, that's part of the beauty of Classic is that it's kind of a time capsule from so long ago, and a lot of the kind of, rough edges and things like that, you can't really have a good reward without risk or, things that aren't as good. And while that might be not the greatest reason for some of the really, clunky things, I think they're important. So, for example, not immediately going to a dungeon, it's important that you run there because there's a reward just to getting there, and there's chances for, dynamic gameplay where you meet up with your group or, maybe you find a Black Lotus on the way, or there's just so much that's missed by immediate satisfaction with things that I think a lot of that should stay. I think it's important. That being said, I would like to have arenas.
Arenas.
Ooh.
There you go. All right.
Yeah. Great question, by the way.
Yeah, great question. Who's got next?
Guildbank was my. Guildbank's my.
Guildbank. Yeah, come on.
Guildbank.
Okay, our next question's right here.
So as a new player who looks at it and is really interested in looking at all of it, which would be better, to jump into Classic or jump into retail?
Ooh, wow, these are really good questions.
I'm gonna say this first. Depends on what kind of game you like to play, right? Hugely. So, for instance, I've played retail up until Legion. And for me, retail was very much a game that I could log on to and play by myself with not really dealing with anyone else. And, I however, did, was part of a guild, but there was a lot of it I could do by myself and kind of get into it without dealing with anyone or actually doing anything that, took me going out of myself. So in Classic, a lot of it is you exploring, finding new things for yourself, asking people, especially as a new player. I feel like you're at a unique point where you can, find this world and explore it. If you enjoy that kind of game where you have to work a little bit but get rewarded, I think Classic might be the game for you. I think retail would be the game for you if you enjoy maybe having more of a set things to do every day, and you have your dailies, you have your routine things, and I think Classic offers a little bit more in terms of replayability for me when it comes to being able to play more different classes and things like that. However, there is a little bit more to do on the day-to-day grind in retail, so that might help you a little bit.
Also, if graphics are a thing that you're really into, obviously Classic isn't the prettiest game ever made. I mean, I think it's beautiful, but I'm a purist, so I mean, I'm very biased. But I think that retail is a much more up-to-date looking game. I don't know if that might be important to you. I don't know. Yeah.
Excellent. All right, we have time for a couple more questions if they're quick ones. All right, sir, go ahead.
Thanks for having this, by the way, guys. This might be controversial or too early. Would you guys want to see TBC next, or them to build upon Classic? Classic Plus.
So I'm just going to say I'm a huge fan of TBC. I really didn't start raiding hardcore until TBC. My favorite class and combination, it's Holy Priest TBC is just my favorite thing of all time in WoW. So absolutely, I am die-hard fan of TBC and want to see it 100%.
Actually, I want to poll the audience. So how many people would want to see TBC? Raise your hand.
The Burning Crusade.
the Burning Crusade after Classic, how many people would want to see something different like Classic Plus?
All the
We
above.
got both.
That's
You
right.
got both, yeah. Okay.
I'm still. I mean, I want to see both. I want to see both.
So
Yeah.
both.
I personally want the Burning Crusade,
Yeah.
and I won't go into the nitty-gritty of why that's the case, but I'll say this. If we get anything, if a decision is made to give us something more in the classic franchise, then I think it's a layup that we're getting the Burning Crusade.
Yeah.
If we get anything, which is another argument all on its
It
own.
requires less development pressure
It is
and money.
pre-made
Yeah.
material, ready to go. They've already told us it is infinitely easier to redo the Burning Crusade than it was to do vanilla.
Exactly,
yeah.
because people ask for oh, they should do classic, but they should balance it so balance druids are more competitive for DPS. Yeah, it's called TBC. They've already done this 13 years ago or whatever. I feel like it's such a safer option because you mess one thing up with Classic Plus, and it's not classic anymore. And all of a sudden, enhancement shamans are now all suddenly the top DPS, and it's just a totally different flavor of the game.
I think there are kind of 2 points that I would make. First, I think one of the formulas we know works, it worked in the private server scene, is almost like seasons. So run the server for a while and then reset it periodically, and you kind of get better and better and better. And so they've been doing that on EverQuest for many years. They call them progression servers, and you almost kind of think about seasons in Diablo 3, right? So what if you did something like that? But I do, and the thing they'll do on the EverQuest side is they'll pick a random expansion from 10 years ago, and they'll say, all right, we're going to put it out for 6 months, go play it, right? And they'll just kind of work their way through, and then they'll start the rotation again over time. So I think there's definitely room for something like that, and maybe if you want to keep your character in that expansion, then they have a spot for you to do that at the end of the season, maybe give you some retail rewards or whatever to get you to use it. So I would do TBC, though, for sure. Some of my best memories.
Yeah.
And I know he would for arenas.
Enough said.
Well, excellent, guys. I think that's a great place for us to stop because we are out of time. Let's give a big round of applause to our WoW Classic panelists. Thank you guys so much. And of course, thank you to all of you for coming out to Con Before the Storm and attending the World of Podcast, sponsored by Medieval Times and Wowhead, because they are awesome. So thank you guys very much. Have a wonderful evening. I think Seraphis would like the mic.
Thank you guys for coming, by the way.
Thanks for
Thank
being
you
here.
guys.
Come say hello. Come say hello.
Thank you for listening to this presentation from World of Podcasts and Con Before the Storm, powered by Wowhead. World of Podcasts 2019 was made possible thanks to our community backers via Kickstarter, Wowhead, and Medieval Times in Buena Park, California. Go to medievaltimes.com to learn more about how you can witness an epic battle of steel and steed. You can also follow @MedievalTimesCA on Twitter. For the latest news, information, and guides for World of Warcraft, check out wowhead.com. This podcast was a production of and is copyrighted by D20 Creative Alliance. It may not be reproduced or retransmitted without written consent from D20 Creative Alliance. The views and opinions expressed are those of individual participants and do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of D20 Creative Alliance, Wowhead, or our sponsors. To learn more about World of Podcasts or Con Before the Storm, go to conbeforestorm.com.